Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you very much for joining us. New webinar, new topic. And before I start talking about the topic, just some administrative things. You just saw the sign that we record this webinar. You can find it afterwards on the website as well. But yeah, if you don't agree on it, then I'm sorry, but we like to share it with other people. The other thing is, please unmute yourself, but I see most people do it, and otherwise we will do it during the sessions. And other thing, if you have any questions, you can always put it in a chat box or ask the questions afterwards. And if you want to have more information about SA Child anyway, please go to our website, www.sachild with SA, how do you call it? Dash child.org, not com, but .org.
Yes.
Hyphen, thank you, sorry. I'm in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm thinking Dutch. So all good. Would be lovely. If you have any questions, you can find information there, or otherwise send us a message or an email. And today we're going to talk about a very important topic. It's about all the challenges and needs during transition for people with cerebral palsy. Everyone's different, as we all know. Like, cerebral palsy is a really big variety. So today we have two speakers who will share their life experiences, but it will be the first of the one of series, I think. I think it's very important to have more webinars on this topic, and everyone have different experiences. So today, Azim Khan and Ellen Dreyer, you can see them there. They will talk about their experiences, and thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experiences. And yeah, be open and doing this. I think you're going to help a lot of people. So thank you for that. And the other speaker will be Roshan Sali. She's on her way. She's my PhD student on this topic, on transition, challenges, needs from childhood into adulthood. Besides that, she is, sorry, I'm just getting a call. Roshan is calling. Okay, I'll pick up just now. What I want to say is that Roshan is also the head of physiotherapy at Cerebral School. It's a special needs school. So I just got a call from her now, so I think she is stuck. So I would suggest that we start with Azim and then ask Ellen to speak, and then Roshan will follow after that. And in the meantime, I'm just going to find out what is happening. So Azim, can I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you, Nellika.
Thank you.
Well, CP, I would say initially, before we get to transition, starts at a young age. And I think for me personally, I don't think I was there maybe to catch the brunt of it, or what it really entailed and where we're going forward and what is happening. But I think initially at a young age, it's your parents that take this responsibility and burden upon them and to take this forward. And when I recall, as about, I think, a 7 or 8 year old at Cerebral School, you know, growing up amongst 4 other siblings, you then be labeled as, well, special, or maybe disabled, or those type of terminologies that do come up. And then I think the strain then comes on behalf of those who bring, or your parents that bring you up, that take the strain and go. And I was very fortunate in terms of having a good support structure from siblings, from family, from friends. And going to a school like Eros didn't feel odd for me. It didn't feel different for me. In my mind, I don't walk as a person that has a problem, although the whole world can see it. I still think up until today, at 39 years of age, I'm walking normally. So on a mental aspect, you know, as we transition, a lot of people are maybe not that fortunate, where mentally, I think, I don't know what has happened, but I think through the grace of God and what all is good, that I've always had a positive attitude, you know, going forward, carrying on. And that has kept me in good stead, you know, going forward. And I think I left the Eros School at the age of 8 or 9. And I think there was a physio by the name of Marika van der Merwe, which was very influential as my development. Sometimes you might think it's just a physio, it's this person, but you always had that person at the back of your head that maybe spoke to your parents and said, look, this child needs to go forth. And going to a normal school then, it was odd for me, because you'd get a lot of questions, you would be looked at differently, but it never put down my spirits, And then a fall, like a fall on the ground or a trip would mean a lot to you. At the school of Eros and that, it wasn't even an issue, but you get through that and you overcome all those smaller type things, that actually builds up and gives you the confidence further on. I know we speak about transition, but these are all the little things that you think of when you can. And before the ops and that and the rhizotomies, well, I have no recollection of how it was. And I was always told, oh, your condition was quite severe and it's changed you drastically. But as a little kid then, as an adult now, I still feel I'm walking normally the rest of the world, but in my body. And I'm truly blessed that I don't need no wheelchair. I don't have any aids, And then on the mental side, I don't think I've been hampered. I've always had a good to go attitude and positive things. Then obviously in the teenage years, and then going through the ops and going to public places with a wheelchair, with a walker, it becomes maybe a bit embarrassing, but I think that's just, teenage hormones playing up, and growing up in a household where it's very competitive, especially in the sporting type arenas, brothers that were normal went to karate. My parents just put me in. They played club cricket. I had to play. But through all of that, I always had good support from coaching in cricket to karate. Wherever I went with normal people, it was fine. And I never felt that I was always out, academically. Thank God, I never had any issues. So when I was in a normal school and then taken out and brought back, I never really suffered. So it was very easy for me to catch up and going forth, And then as we go on, I think getting more to university and these things, the main problem that I would encounter was, I guess it's with everyone, and not only cerebral palsy, is your ability to stay fit. I think that comes with age, and just the time in for, and the smaller things that you face. I mean, the orthotics in your shoes might not be a big thing to anyone else, but boy, try any other shoe that isn't specific to that or doesn't. Your feet will get kills. It seems like a minuscule thing. For example, if I have to put on a formal shoe and go to a wedding or a formal function for 2 hours, my feet are shot afterwards. That is like odd. And previously in my high school years and those things going on, physios would actually write letters of recommendation to the teachers and the heads that due to the condition, is it allowed? And they give me preference to wear a air sole tacky with my inner soles, which actually helped. And it takes because a foot pain for someone might be a foot pain and a wobble along, but sometimes, my condition specifically, that really puts you off, And then in adulthood, look, I've been blessed, that I don't rely on any painkillers as such. Yes, now and then we'll have a niggle and an ache and a pain, but that's, I think, due to maybe my own laziness, not wanting to train, or not finding the time for it and so forth, And but then otherwise, I always think back, to the days of Eros, which I find was instrumental because it was one of a kind institution and school up until today. I don't think I can have, even in a private sector, where you had a school that was so well catered for. Look, I did leave very early, and I always thought that was it was always a positive note in my thoughts and memories as great, because when I went from there to a normal school, I found that it was a downgrade, and I always commend that type of facility that actually put down, the groundwork and what needs to be done, and that to that. And, you know, it all plays its smaller roles, and the different interactions with physios and OTs and psychologists that mold you to where you are today, you know. And I'm very fortunate that I've not been hampered too much. And we get challenges like, I know what Nalika I spoke to you about, and when I had a life insurance issue, and because of this conditions as an adult, they said, no, we wouldn't cover you. But in my case, I told him my CP does not affect all of those. If you can cover people with all other conditions, it's worse off to actually then get a letter from a specialist and, you know, neurosurgeon, not any doctor, and the processes it goes through. I think it was a bit ridiculous, and finally we were successful. And those are the smaller things that we do face, you know. But other than that, I feel really blessed. And mentally, when you go through a patch, what I always found was helpful when you feel a bit down and out, then yeah, a lot of questions go through your head. A reinforcement technique that there's always someone worse than you. I always say, think of someone that is blind. I cannot figure that how I will to manage in that. And then I pick myself up and always keep a positive thought. And that's basically how I've dealt with it. And that's the transition. And I think I've been fortunate where I've not had to search that hard in terms of physio and extra aids that are needed. And I'm very thankful for that, you know. And that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Azim. I think it's very interesting, very good, and I love what you said. Stay fit, and that's for everyone. It's not just it's if you have a disability or not. Staying fit is prime. Like most of you maybe know, I do a lot of research with adults with cerebral palsy. You can see the ones who stay fit, you know, doing well, doing the best. Let's say it that way. And it's not only physically, it's also mentally. So it's just a general thing, but the question is maybe how to stay fit, and that is the challenge, is that not everyone know how to do it. So that is something what could be helped with. I think, Elena, if you don't mind, Roshan,
yes,
right?
I think
so
Elena
maybe...
must start. Roshan's on her way.
Okay, so it's fine, I can do?
Yes, then it's your turn.
Well, I've been disabled all my life. And I think in some ways my disability saved my life, because the school I went to exposed me to a bigger, better environment. And I think that was key for me. I started at Ada school at the age of 3, and I went all the way up to matric. And I remember in the last 2 years of my schooling, I went into the principal's office and I said to him, look, what is going to happen to me after school? Because like Mr. Khan said, the school was very good at providing us a very adequate environment to learn and grow as children, but they didn't necessarily prepare us for the transition into the real world, the working world, whatever people deemed as normal, you know. So in the last 2 years of my schooling, I started initiatives like the business day. I did a leadership camp, and it was, yes, for me to find my own way, but also to encourage students at the school to think of their life after school. And basically, that basically started me thinking about what I would then do after school. I was very lucky in the sense that when I finally decided to pursue journalism, I could. I studied at CPUT for 3 years, and then I worked in the normal working world in communications. I worked in government for a long time, and then subsequently I worked in like corporate, and I then made the transition now to working for myself. But I think what was important for me at the time when I left Eros was to get socially integrated. You know, I was exposed to many things at school, but I wasn't necessarily socialized properly. And I think that was one of the biggest things I had to learn when I into the university sphere and the working sphere, is just how to, interact with people, how to communicate, how to be productive, and how to contribute positively, to the environment that, I was part of. Because when I started working, I was technically uh, considered a BEE token, and it was never about that for me. It was always about adding value, you know. So, 2 years into my career, I was married at the time, and I had my first child. And I think that was also another big transition for me, being a disabled person, having a family, and of course, me being a woman, I physically bore the children. I think one of the best decisions I made was to have my children very young. My oldest son had a birthday yesterday. I think he turned 16. If anyone ever told me I had a 16-year-old, like, someone would have to kick me. But I mean, I was really lucky in the sense that I had a very good support system. I always had a good family support system. And I had a very good gynecologist, but not necessarily that he understood, what my specific needs were. As a disabled person, I think that my body coped very well. And so there weren't many complications. And so, that was a big thing for me. So, in terms of socializing people today, I would say if you are in the position to influence a young person with a disability, encourage them to have a positive mindset, as the previous speaker said. You have to see your disability not as an overall, defining aspect of you, but only one characteristic. Persistence is extremely important. Resilience, especially mental resilience, is extremely important. And of course, as you get older, and Nalika expressed, physically being fit is also one of the best things that a disabled person can do for him or herself. I find now, at the age that I am, that it's my opinion that if you are a disabled person with resources, you are a lot better off. But if you don't have those resources, like you don't have access to good physiotherapy, you don't have access to, a positive environment or resources that can uplift you, it becomes a lot more challenging. So the things that we need to impart to children that are going to be the next generation that are dealing with disabilities is be resilient, learn as you go, and continue learning, because I think those are the kind of things that will stand you in good stead. Don't just learn academically, but learn how to solve problems in your life as you go along, because that is going to contribute to your longevity, and also how you cope with the challenges that you face. So if today you have to learn to fry egg, become the best person at frying that egg, and obviously understand that being a person with a disability, you are not going to do things as other people do it. So never compare yourself to someone else. Compare yourself to yourself. Be a little bit better than you were yesterday or the day before. And I think, that has always been key for me. Obviously, set good goals for yourself. And like I said, just be persistent, because a lot of life and a lot of success starts with failure. Become exceptionally good at failing, but never giving up, And for me, just lastly, the thing that I would want to really touch on is that disabled people need a lot of help. In our country, we face a lot of challenges, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it be race, all of those things. And disability is very low on the list, even to the point where the government has so many other priorities that, we just somewhere at the bottom. We just glad to be noticed sometimes. And so like I said, a lot of disabled people in our country don't have access to resources or private healthcare. Often they find themselves having to look at government institutions. Like I tried to access physiotherapy at a day hospital, District 6 Day Hospital. And they actually said to me that as a person with a disability, I've reached my rehabilitation potential. So you see, even government resources that should be available to us is not, because unless I'm in an accident, I can't access that resource. So there's a space for discussing things, and there's a space, for dialogue and understanding the problem. But there should be things that are put in place. And if the government can't do it, then civil society should do it. And it shouldn't be NGOs or civil society that discuss issues. I think if you can start a civil society organization that provides practical support for a person with a disability, like you can provide them with assistive devices, or you can provide them with psychological support, or you can provide them with what was the other thing? But you just practical like physiotherapy. Those are the things that are going to help bridge the gap. Because you see, this is not it's not a single zone problem. It's a multifaceted problem. And so you must teach children to be more resilient, or people with disability to be more resilient. You must teach them to have the right kinds of skills, or to be able to learn as they go along. But then all of the other institutions also need to play their part. And, so it's a complicated thing, but if we can at least get one of these spheres working properly, it's a step in the right direction. And yeah, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Ellen. It's really, really good to hear your opinion as well, your experiences. Like it's nice to see the differences, but all the challenges you all have. I would love to ask questions, and I'm sure other people would love to ask questions as well, but Roshan is online in the meantime, so maybe give her first time, and I'm sure there is time after that for questions. Would be great. There's Roshan, so I'm just heading over.
Hi, everybody. I'm terribly sorry for the mix-up. And of course, the webinar will be a little bit upside down now, because I was supposed to be starting the kicking off the webinar. So just bear with me a little bit. I want to just show you a couple of slides that I've prepared. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, as you all know, this is about the challenges of transition. And of course, currently we know that once the child gets diagnosed, a lot of things get put into place for them. So Red Cross Hospital, for example, sees for all their needs until they are 6 years old, and that will include whatever therapies they need, whatever referrals, everything that is sorted out until they're 6. And that's when they start the school. And luckily, we have several schools in Cape Town at the moment that are geared towards children with a disability. But of course, we know, and as Ellen and Azim has already given us, there are lots of challenges that happen once you reach an adulthood. And of course, this is not only a problem that we know in South Africa. This is something that has been coming along for a very long time, and also not only happening in low to middle income countries. For example, it's happening in high income countries. And although we know that CP is a childhood disability, we also know now that the majority of individuals are now reaching adulthood. So things are changing a little bit out there. And we know that, for example, in the UK, 90% of people are reaching 50 years old. The stats for the Australia that 85% of adults are actually reaching 58 years old. And then in Canada, they are expecting that the people living over 65 years will triple in the next 10 years. And then, of course, literature shows us that adults with cerebral palsy often report increased levels of pain. They have more fatigue. They experience a reduced walking ability. They have an increased risk of anxiety and depression. And then, as you were saying, Ellen is rightfully saying, as well as Azim, that you need to keep fit so that you can cope with it. And so this has not been found with cerebral palsy at the moment, where there's reduced participation and, of course, lower levels of physical activity. Oh, yeah, sorry. And then because of that, an increase in non-communicable diseases. So at Eros School, as we were saying, I just want to give you a little bit of background where I come in, was established for children with cerebral palsy. And we are, at the moment, have the CAPS curriculum growing from pre-grade R right up to grade 12. So we follow the same curriculum as they do in mainstream schools. And however, because we realized that everybody was not coping with this mainstream curriculum, we started a skills-based occupational phase. And I think this is the way things have been going in a lot of the special schools that we are currently having. And then at these special schools, we have a multidisciplinary team. So you will have therapy, you will have psychology, there are nurses to administer medication, the school doctor comes in to just check up on everybody. We have access to orthopedic surgeons, orthotic workshops, the dentistry and optometry is even at the school a lot of the time. And then, of course, if we don't have that, we refer you to, for example, dietetics or audiology, if that is what you need. However, the problem comes in when because this is not available to adolescents once they leave. And specifically at EROS, and I'm not sure what happens at the other special schools, a lot of our ex-learners come back years later when they are struggling with spasticity that is really inhibiting their movement. And they're needing surgery or they're needing orthotics, just needing advice about everything. And of course, bridging that gap, like Ellen is saying, is very important. And so a transition center becomes very important for this process. So as adolescents, they then become educated about what it is that they can possibly expect. And they get also taught about the proper exercise regime that they need, where they can go for orthotics, who they need to talk to. And of course, because this is not available currently in South Africa, we have, for example, at EROS started an outpatient clinic because, like Ellen was saying, when you go to the government institutions, they just basically say, I'm sorry, we don't know what to do with cerebral palsy. And this is a big problem. So in the meantime, we've now started this little outpatient clinic where ex-learners or even people in the community come and just get advice from us, just get shown an exercise regime, or just given referrals for whatever it is that they need. And so this is then where my PhD study started, or the idea of PhD started, because we're having these challenges faced with transition, and we know that it's not only a lower to middle income country issue. However, before we can even think of starting a transition center, we then needed information. We needed to understand what the status is of the adults, well, not only adults, adolescents and adults, the health status is in urban South Africa. And we're talking about health status, we're talking about the pain, we're talking about the fatigue, all those things that have already been studied in the higher income countries. And then, of course, the unmet needs. So we need to understand what it is that they are needing, what is being met, and where the challenges are, so that we can bridge the gap that Ellen has spoken about. So transition centers have already been established in several countries. For example, in the Netherlands, they use what is called the Rotterdam Transition Profile, and that tells them exactly where the gaps are, so that they can develop a program specific to that individual. In the UK, they have what is called young adult teams. And that team is then specifically for that child, obviously involving the child, involving the parent, and some of the health professionals. And in that has been shown to be very effective. And then in Canada, they have what is called an independence program. And this has also been shown to be very effective in getting adults with cerebral palsy to be fully incorporated and participating in society, because that is the goal of all transition centers, that these adults, they go out into society, they fit in, they have found a place, they feel that they belong, and things have been adapted to make easier for them. I'm not going to go into too much of what has been found in my study, so you can obviously read it. But, we found that the levels of pain, health-related quality of life is quite comparable to what we have found in higher income countries, except that we don't have the same level of mental health problems. And then, of course, physical activity levels, we did find that they were markedly reduced, even compared to what the World Health Organization is recommending. However, we found that for adolescents, the GMFCS levels 1 to 3 were on par with their TD peers. And then in the adults, we found that levels 1 and 2 were on par. And of course, as can be expected, levels 3, 4, and 5 were not as physically active because of the usage of assistive devices. Then what gave us quite a bit of insight into the challenges that were being faced by these adults with cerebral palsy was an instrument called the Southampton Needs Assessment Questionnaire, which is a SNAP. So this had to be adapted a little bit for South Africa, because the language wasn't the same, and we needed to also include some of the questions that were not included, and we wanted to have some information about that. But it was covering basically topics of disability, problems that they were having with recreation, accessibility in terms of the accommodation, in terms of mobility and transport, in terms of accessibility just in general into the community. And then, of course, as we know, finances are always a problem, not only because we have our socioeconomic status in low to middle income countries is always a challenge, but also we find, obviously, people with disabilities have an increased challenge with finances. Like Ellen was saying, you can't always access the government's institutions, and that then comes money out of your pocket that you need to pay for. Medical aids, for example, don't always cover all your assistive devices, and that's what extra things that you also need to pay for. And of course, the last the last question that we wanted to find out was what they felt that they needed when they transitioned from adolescence into adulthood. And that was very interesting, those questions. Those answers, I'm sorry. So under the qualitative data, we found that the answers, that the adults were actually saying that disability is affecting their lives in all spheres. So at home, they are having problems with the accommodation. They are having problems even in getting into their houses because there isn't a specific housing that you get for disability in currently in South Africa. They still have to maneuver upstairs. They still have to deal with the small spaces that they have, so the wheelchairs are the problem. In social, they didn't find a lot of extramurals or any recreation that was specifically geared towards people with disabilities. Whatever you find out there, the people with disabilities did that, and it wasn't always possible. The ramps, for example, even if there were ramps, were very steep. The facilities, even the bathrooms and things that they were available, wasn't always enough. And then, of course, at work, disability was always, like Ellen was saying, maybe they were just employed because to be a BE number. And that affected morale, but also affected that the buildings were not always geared towards people with disabilities. So they would have, yes, a disabled toilet, but it would be only on the second floor. So you would then be on the third floor and you would have to navigate your way down. So you almost had to schedule a time that you needed to go to the bathroom so that you could make it there in time. Other accessibility issues that were reported was in the health services. And this is where Ellen also then mentioned that the community institutions were not geared towards treating or doing any kind of intervention for people with cerebral palsy. There are problems with waiting lists for wheelchairs, for example, that people needed to do with. Recreation, I think we've already covered for a bit. Transport was a big problem, because although dial-a-ride is available, there is a long waiting list. And even with dial-a-ride, if you were on the list, you needed to book your transport at least 7 days in advance. So people with disabilities are not able to be spontaneous and then just decide, okay, let's go to the movies tomorrow, because they needed to book something 7 days in advance. You know, the transport, for example, in the taxi, if you had an assistive device, you needed to pay extra because it was taking up another seat. Even if you had to use Uber, they weren't always geared to use for your assistive device, and getting the wheelchair into the boot of a car is not always easy, and the Uber driver will then need to help you. I think with accommodation, we already covered things like the space issues and the just basically the area around the houses, for example. There isn't something that that people with disability can apply for special housing. And yes, there is. I know people are always asking us, can we write letters because they want to apply for this house, but the house is still built for an able-bodied person. And so the surroundings outside, the ground is uneven, it's gravel, so it's not conducive for somebody that is using an assistive device. And of course, as we said, community buildings, the ramps are there, but the ramps are steep. The parking bays are there, but there are so few that, and unfortunately also we have a culture where if I come there, I can use that parking bay because there's nobody else with a disability here. So people use that parking bays. And then you have to end up parking a lot further and having to walk into the mall or into whatever it is that you were trying to. And then of course, when we asked about transition, a lot of the answers were about the need for guidance and the development of life skills to function independently as a person with a disability. And this, I feel, is where special schools can really start to make a difference. However, we are limited, obviously, with time, and because they need to finish and complete a structured CAPS curriculum, that we need to find a time where we can actually go in and teach them a little bit of what to expect, a little bit of what is out there before they actually leave the school, because we know once they leave the school that there isn't anything available. The pipe dream, of course, is that we start our own transition center. And unfortunately, that is something that is not going to be happening soon. There's obviously lots of financial implications. Also, what is going to be, where is it going to be? And I mean, I would suggest that we start like we're trying with at EROS, a little bit of an outpatient clinic, a little bit of just something where people can go to, so that there is this support. And I think a big challenge is providing that support right now. And like Alan was saying, it's not just one thing, it's multifaceted. But as soon as we can start just with one thing, for example, we are just offering physiotherapy, and we are just offering consultation for orthotics, for orthopedics and those kinds of things, but we are starting something. And I think this is what I'm hoping to get across with the thesis that I have now embarked on, just to make people aware of the problems, and so that we can start thinking of where the gaps are, what it is that we can offer, and how we're going to go about it. And then, of course, thank you so much to Azim and Ellen for sharing your personal experiences with us. I mean, it's not easy to be talking about what problems and what issues you have. So we are really thankful that you were willing to firstly give up your time and then tell us about the challenges that you are facing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashan. That's wonderful. Thank you for the background. I'm happy that you that we also could share this and have some more background about what you found with all the interviews you did and your own experiences as well. I think one thing is, because I will open to others for questions, but before I do that, I have two things. One thing, Professor Silla Springer, thank you so much. I completely forgot to mention you in the beginning, and I saw you were so humble not to put yourself on the flyer, but you have been the big push behind this and organizing this webinar. So thanks to Silla. And the other thing what I also would love to mention, and that maybe from my own experience and working with the people in the Netherlands, is that transition and the problems going into adulthood, everyone always thinks about the adults, like, you know, what's happening when they're 16, 18 years old and the issues they start, and then when you become very older. But I think it starts early already. And I really heard that they start sometimes at the age of 10 years already to mentally prepare themselves for the future. And I think that is something where the special schools, if you go to a special school or not to a special school, but maybe a transition center or a GP or wherever you go to, can help you to prepare you for the world when you get a little bit older. Because there are issues I worked, as you maybe know, or I've heard, I worked a lot with the adults with cerebral palsy, and I really got questions like, can I have children? And some of them were, and Ellen, I know you, and Azim as well, both of you have children. I'm very happy to hear and pleased that you have families. But seriously, it's unbelievable how many adults think they can't be sexually active, can't have children, and all these things. What is very important, I think, as well to know, it's not only to be mobile and to walk around and being have a job or not. It's also important to have a family and things like that. I think it's really important to talk about that already at a younger age. So that's just something that I thought would be nice to add. But for now, it would be really nice if you have any kind of questions. And yeah, I think it's open for everyone, Azim, Ellen, and Roshan. So I don't see anything in the chat box at the moment, but please go ahead for anyone. And if there is no one, then I can start with a question beforehand, because I think, Roshan, it's maybe something nice to mention, because you mentioned in your talk about the mental status that when you compare the results, what we saw to what we see in the high-income countries, that mentally.
The chat box.
Okay, let's look at that. But just quickly, that mentally, the adults with cerebral palsy living in South Africa and Cape Town, like part of your study, were doing even better than in.
Yes, which of course, I mean, which was surprising for us, because you would obviously, the literature in high income countries are saying that, you know, adults with cerebral palsy are suffering from anxiety and depression, and we didn't find that at all. So that was quite an important finding, I think, because it just shows that the resilience that we, you know, I don't want to say as a nation, but I think that the resilience that we have shown in the face of adversity comes through strongly in the study. I'm just looking at the question is, how often do you run the transition clinics at EROS? And we run it once a week. So at the moment, it's only the physiotherapists. So we've set aside an hour between 2 and 3. And because we are 3 therapists, so we can see 3 individuals for that week. And then we also try and make use of our students and use it as a teaching, almost like a teaching tool. So they see the children, they see the learners at the school during the day, and they then leave at 2. And that is why we have that extra hour. So we're not using our contact time with the learners at our school. We are using our extra admin time that we have on a Tuesday. So we also then use the learners, the students, if there are more than 3 people that want to see us on that particular Tuesday. If we find that they needed something else, maybe an OT or maybe a speech therapist, we would ask the therapists at the school, and they're more than willing to always help out. But we haven't had a request for any other health professional yet.
But is it not a problem for you, because it's primary school or with high school, but like it's normally it should be until the age of 16, 18.
We are, yeah. So the learners at the school, because they leave at our learners at the school, yes, go up to 18 and sometimes even 21, depending on how many times they've had to repeat a grade or what age they even started schooling. So we do have 21-year-olds often in our matric class. And yes, because we are on a Tuesday, we have that extra hour of admin, so we can fit in our adults in that extra time that we have at school. And because the WCED wants us to give 20% to outreach. And so this is how we then decided to use our 20% outreach and offer the services. It's mainly been ex-learners who have contacted us that they had problems like Ellen when they were told that, you know, there's nothing else that anybody can do for you. And so they then contacted us because they know us being their therapists when they were there. So then they contacted us and said, can you help me? Can you give me advice? And then they come in for that hour.
That's really wonderful that you do all of that. I'm just wondering if there are people maybe in the audience who have also experiences with it. Like, because this is all in Cape Town, and I realized it is, you know, as a child is for Southern Africa. So I don't know if the people are from outside South Africa, but also people working more in the rural areas, because that's quite different, of course, to what we have. And then, you know, we say already maybe there's lacking some things, but that is even in urban South Africa. So anyone who wants to share or have questions or want to add something about their experiences or have questions.
I see there's another question in the chat box here now, and says, do OT students ever do home visits? So I think before, in the past, it was a lot easier for us to organize home visits. And I can't speak about OT students, but I know the physiotherapy students don't do home visits, just because it becomes difficult to organize in terms of transport, in terms of, so the students get dropped off at the institutions with the, well, I'm talking about UCT students, for example. So there isn't transport to take them to do home visits. I know the therapists at EROS often do home visits, especially if we find that it's something that really bothers us, and we've tried to make contact with the parent and it's been difficult for them. Then we've gone out and done home visits. Yes, but I mean, I'm not sure about OT students, but physio students definitely don't do home visits.
Just a general question from me. The majority of people who signed up for the webinar, what is their sphere of interest? Is the majority physiotherapists? Are they physiotherapists?
I don't know many of the names. I see some physiotherapists. I see even a nurse from one of the special schools. But I don't know.
Normally it's like a mix. It can also be parents of child, or it could be like a lot of developmental medicine specialists. So you can't see it now. We have it somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reason I'm asking is, you know, the majority of people, we can talk about our own experiences, but I feel the value that people would get out of this sort of interaction is by asking questions, you know, because then we could basically tell them, based on our experience, what we understand about what they want to know, you know, so that would be very important.
So there's a question. Should I just read it? Like, hello, the barriers for adolescents with CP living in rural areas are far greater than those in urban areas. Transport is a real barrier, and the idea of a transition center is a great one. In South Africa, the special schooling system looking at the skills training really does not prepare the young adults for the open labor market. These problems are generic and need addressing, but how?
Yeah, so that is a very important question. Thank you. But and the how is something that I think forums like this, where that becomes really important, because we need to brainstorm, and it's not a simple answer. We do realize that that yes, Cape Town is very urban, so that the problems that we see are not going to be nearly the same as somebody in very, very rural areas. And we always have to be cognizant of that fact. Even, for example, health services, if we're struggling here, and like you say, transport is even a bigger problem in the rural areas, then things must be so much worse there. And I think that I don't I want to almost say like Rome wasn't built in a day. I think we need to take this one step at a time. So we start small. We start with something like for example, we are hoping to start something small at ERAS and maybe get all the other special schools involved so that we can reach more and more learners gradually. But yes, I agree with you. The how is always a challenge. And yes, I also agree with you that we're not really preparing young adults for the open labor market. And hopefully this is one of the things that can be addressed should we have some kind of transition, not necessarily center, but a clinic.
Yes. And I think your PhD is going to help with this, because I tried to set it up years ago already, and funders are interested in helping to get a building.
Yeah,
in programs or something, and they want to have facts. They really want to have facts, like what is exactly needed, how many people ask for that, how many, etc., etc. So I think your PhD is step one in that direction.
Yes, I really hope so.
Yeah. But I see there's another question for Ellen and Azim. Out of interest, how much therapy do you think you ideally need or would like access to as adults?
Well, for me,
okay, go first.
Sorry, Azim. Continue, Azim.
No, go.
Ellen, you can go. Females first.
Ideally, twice a week would be fine for me. You see, it is something needed, but you have to kind of fit into your overall schedule as a person as well, because you have other responsibilities. But twice a week, minimal, would be a good compromise for you, I think.
And Azim, for you?
And on my side, yes.
Mobile, I think.
Yeah, I would think twice is fine, but I would think as you get older, you actually know your body very well. When you have certain pains, certain aches, but I would think more than twice a week if I could, but life is taxing, demanding, kids from 6 till 8. So if I get it once a week, I'm lucky, but generally that is not enough. So more than twice a week, 3 times a week. And I found the best is stretching and cardiovascular. If you focus on that too, everything else falls into place. You know, the strength training needs to be there. But I think those two, if you get that in a good routine, because sometimes you go for months doing it well, then life takes you on some detours and you just lag and then you feel it again. So yeah, twice is fine, but I think if you have the time, as much as you can,
Agree.
I think, sorry, if I can just jump in there, I think it probably will depend on your level of disability. Like Ellen may need something a lot, may need a lot more intervention than Azim. And I think that if we're really thinking about it, twice a week is still a lot. Because if you're looking at even starting a transition center, you're not going to be starting out with, for example, 12 physiotherapists and a speechy and an OT. And if we can educate them, like you say, stretching is important. And if you can educate the adult then to do some of those stretches, some of the strength training by themselves, then that will alleviate the pressure on the therapist in the center. Because then you can just come every second week just as a checkup and see, is everything fine? Have you had problems with your program? So I think it really just depends on the person that is coming for the therapy.
And I've also found swimming is very nice. Now I just need access to a pool and water, but it's a good overall exercise. It's accessible, children, and it's something that people can do as recreation and you know, it's a good compromise.
Because in actual life, how often do you both get physio?
None.
Well, in my case, it's not physio. It's something, it's just basic training I've put together, and I try once a week. It doesn't always happen, but we try.
But I think that's for everyone.
Yeah.
I I think we should have like all videos on now and see the faces of everyone saying like we wanted to do some sports, so at least once a week. And I think all faces will like, oh yes, or not all, but I know a lot of people want to do more, should do more. We know how it benefits. It's almost 5. I'm just wondering, is there anything else from Azim or Ellen you want to add on?
No, I think, look, Rashaan covered a lot of the gaps that I didn't speak about. She was really good at tidying up. I like it. But I mean, I think generally it was a good discussion, and I think I think it should be the first of many. I think how people are going to deal with these things is just by constantly interacting and reassessing where we are and where we need to go. And, not always trying to do these big things, because everyone wants a big thing, a big solution, a one time, and then we're gone kind of thing. But this is a constant thing over time that people need to invest in. So I think that's important. Just keep the interest going and the participation going. That is the main thing, because that will drive projects and interest in the future.
Great.
Yeah. And what I just want to say is that no matter what your condition and severity, and that I think it's just, it's sometimes easier said than done, but keep a positive attitude. Even normal people with no CP and with full able bodies and that have challenges, we all have it. And that's what I've always been taught, and it's kept me in a positive life. You can have all your bodies and limbs, but you could be absolutely helpless because you're not working with what you've been given. So look at your strengths, identify it, be positive. No one ever said in 20 years when I was an 8-year-old that Azim Khan would go on to university and doing this and this. And don't doubt yourself, and never do that, because there's people with full capacity, but to put it bluntly, are absolutely hopeless. So we shouldn't get into that. And I think those out there listening, take the message of being positive. And when you feel down and depressed, look at someone that is got less than you physically, and I promise you, it makes a world of difference. That switch will click in and your brain goes into overdrive. At my position where I'm at, I will make that difference. And I think that is just a testament to what we should be looking for, because we are in this situation. And I think, by dealing with this, and I'm very blessed, and dealing with other people and seeing the challenges, and, maybe making contact personally later, I didn't know how far this has gone, and maybe an opportunity to get involved at a deeper level, And that's it, just to be positive and never give up.
Thank you. I think very nice words to end this session with. But Rashaan, do you have?
Yes, no, that's excellent. Thank you, Azim. I think it's something that we must all take to heart. And it's not only those with disabilities, even those of us that have nothing, like you're saying, we have no challenges, and we still. So we have no disability, but we still have challenges. So it always remain positive. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you. Sila, do you have any questions, any things to add?
No. Thank you very much, Ellen, Azim, Rashaan, and Elika, for in thinking up this session. It really came from you guys, and I've really felt it was worthwhile. I hope we're going to have more sessions on transition and webinars on transition in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you all. As said, we recorded everything, and I will put it on the website as soon as possible so that you can see it again or share